I'm declassifying a case from America's Heartland, a narrative defined by shadows and a crushing sense of loss. It's the kind of nightmare that forces every guardian to bolt their doors 3 times over before the clock strikes midnight. We are dealing with a void where facts should be. Consider this your formal briefing on the darkness ahead. The following evidence is visceral and might be taxing to process. Forget closure or retribution. We are left only with 14 years of chilling, unanswered inquiries. If you have the resolve for the full debrief, acknowledge the transmission and log your location and local time in the records. Mapping this engagement helps me identify the sectors where the pulse of vigilance still beats for the innocent. Quantify the time it takes for a life to vanish. 60 minutes? 10 minutes? Perhaps it only requires a momentary lapse, a latch left unhooked, or a frame slightly ajar. During October 2011, Kansas City witnessed a routine evening devolve into a parental catastrophe. An infant girl was extracted from the perceived safety of her nursery. The horror lies in the silence. The truth remains buried. This isn't merely a missing persons file. It's an autopsy of systemic collapse and the heavy cost of investigative tunnel vision. It examines a maternal preference for intoxicants over security, and why 14 years later, the trail is ice cold. Prior to the deep dive, I'm requesting your operational assistance. Amplify this transmission, circulate the data, and register your current coordinates and timestamps. The objective is clear. We serve as the proxy for a silenced child and provide intel that prevents another tragedy. Increased situational awareness is our primary defense against the predators lurking outside an unbolted entrance. We represent the vocal cords of the disappeared. Commencing briefing. Subject: Lisa Renee Irwin, born during the frost of November 2010. Physical profile: light hair, blue eyes, a distinct mark on her right leg, and 2 emerging lower teeth. Her siblings used the moniker Pumpkin Pie, a small term of endearment for the family's youngest asset. Lisa projected joy. Her demeanor was the solitary bright spot in a complicated household. Her preferences were simple bananas and pasta. She'd drift off clutching a luminous toy, mimicking the behavior of her older brothers during their interactions. Her environment consisted of a specific themed blanket and various purple plush figures she held for comfort. Standard bedtime was established between 7 and 8 post-meridian. Soundproofing was achieved by sealing her door against the chaos of the boys. She was the glue holding the domestic unit together. The maternal statement was that Lisa served as the final piece of their social puzzle. Her potential was vast, with her initial birthday milestone looming only weeks away. Preparations were underway for a modest celebration involving pastries and decorations. The domestic bliss was a facade. 25-year-old Deborah Bradley remained legally tethered to a soldier named Sean. The obstacle was purely financial: $300 for a legal separation. That $300 figure was an insurmountable barrier, exposing a deep-seated economic fragility. It's a metric that strips away any illusion of stability within the home. Profiles from associates suggest a narcissistic streak. Shirley Pfaff noted an insatiable appetite for the spotlight. Social circles were strained because Deborah frequently manufactured drama to remain the focal point. Her volatile temperament often led to public disturbances and erratic behavioral shifts. Yet, a far more unsettling pattern was emerging in the background. She possessed an obsession with digital validation, documenting every drink and social gathering for public consumption. The data points to conflicting priorities: a social seeker versus the perceived image of a dedicated caregiver. The optics suggested maternal perfection, a curated reality that shattered when the sun went down. Enter Jeremy Irwin, age 29, an industrial electrician by trade. He fathered an 8-year-old boy, Blake, from a prior union with a woman named Rasleen Rain. Following a 2008 custody shift, Jeremy became the primary guardian, a man perpetually drained by the demands of excessive overtime. They built a life together: 3 children, a suburban home, and the outward appearance of a functional unit. Financial stability was a constant struggle, yet they projected the image of a typical American household. Behind closed doors, however, a psychological friction simmered that even casual acquaintances noticed. The residence on North Lister Avenue was architecturally indistinguishable from any other house on that block. It was a neighborhood where everyone knew your name, defined by summer afternoons and porch-side coffee. The surface was pristine, masking a structural rot in the family dynamic that no one dared investigate. This is where the first critical indicator of the coming tragedy was overlooked by the authorities. 7 days before the disappearance, multiple reports reached the police regarding a suspicious male stalking local playgrounds. Description: 40 years old, slender build, average height. Officers logged the interaction and then took zero action. Insufficient evidence for detention was the official justification provided by the responding officers. In my professional experience, real danger thrives specifically within these gaps of institutional apathy. 30 days prior to the incident, an anonymous tip regarding child welfare at the residence reached state services. The report cited erratic parental behavior and the haunting, persistent cries of an infant through the night. A caseworker documented the red flag and scheduled a mandatory home visit for the following week. That week turned into a month, and the file was eventually abandoned due to administrative overload. Think about that. The very system designed to shield the most vulnerable simply went offline. I want to hear your perspective. Have you witnessed this type of systemic breakdown in your community? October 3rd, 2011, arrived with a deceptive sense of normalcy that betrayed nothing. At 1400 hours, Jeremy returned from his shift to share a meal with his children. It was a mundane domestic scene that would later be scrutinized as their final moment of peace. Later that evening, at 16:30, Deborah departed for the market accompanied by her brother, Philip Netz. CCTV shows them buying diapers and baby food, alongside a $40 box of wine, a detail I find troubling. A couple who couldn't find $300 for a legal separation suddenly prioritized $40 for alcohol. $40. That represents half of the weekly nutritional budget for those 3 children. This purchase serves as a profound psychological marker, casting a dark shadow over her maternal priorities. By 17:30 that evening, the situation within the home began to shift. Jeremy departed for a rare overnight shift at a construction site for a new coffee shop. There is one specific detail about this timeline that remains deeply unsettling to me. While the father left his home vulnerable, the state's safety net remained completely and utterly unresponsive. No one involved realized that the perimeter of their safety had been irrevocably breached that night. At 1840 hours, the investigative timeline takes its most critical turn. Deborah placed Lisa in her crib. The child was wearing a kitten print shirt and clutching her blanket. To any observer, it was a standard conclusion to a routine family day. Instead, it marked the descent into a psychological nightmare from which there would be no escape. The night opened quietly when a neighbor, Samantha Brandow, arrived at the residence for a visit. She brought her 4-year-old daughter, and the children played while the adults socialized. It looked like a typical social call, but it was the last hour that house would ever be secure. The women moved to the front porch, steadily draining the box of wine purchased hours earlier. Deborah's consumption was heavy and rapid. She would later claim she had 5 to 10 servings. Samantha eventually admitted they finished the entire 5-liter box in 4 hours, leaving Deborah's memory fractured. The last confirmed contact with the infant was recorded by the mother at 1840. Her story shifted from a 10 p.m. check to admitting she never entered that room again after bedtime. Her statements regarding her alcohol intake fluctuated wildly, severely damaging her credibility with investigators. Cognitive function dissolved with every drink, leaving the child's safety entirely unmonitored through the night. As an investigator, I have to wonder, what indicators did we miss before the darkness set in? Leave your thoughts below. If you were in Samantha's position, how would you have handled that night? 10:30 p.m. Samantha steps out, leaving Deborah alone as the house begins to settle into a quiet haze. Memory is a fickle thing. Deborah couldn't recall the drift into sleep, the flick of a switch, or the turn of a key. Just fractured images remain. Her eldest drifting off in his room, the infant nestled beside her under the covers. A cocktail of red wine and sheer exhaustion dragged her down into a heavy, unresponsive void. While she drifted in that deep unconsciousness, the shadows were moving. It was roughly 3:30 a.m. Jeremy Irwin clocks out from the Starbucks site, navigating the silent streets on his weary commute home. Pulling into the drive at 4 a.m., he's hit with an immediate red flag. The entire house is glowing with light. Deborah was meticulous about the electric bill. She never left the lights burning. Then, he sees the front door is unbolted. A window screen in the computer room had been sliced open, the glass pushed wide to the night air. Jeremy crosses the threshold. The atmosphere is heavy with the realization that the perimeter has been breached. He moves down the hallway toward the nursery, his boots echoing against a growing sense of dread. He peers into the crib, and his pulse flatlines. The space is cold. Lisa is gone. The blanket is there. The toy glow worm sits undisturbed. But his daughter has vanished. Can you fathom that gut punch of terror? Drop your reactions in the comments. Jeremy storms into the master bedroom, gripping Deborah's shoulder. Where is she? Where is Lisa? He demands. Caught in a post-sleep fog, Deborah mutters a confused response. She's in her crib, Jeremy. Leave her be. But the sheer panic radiating from him snaps her into reality. The cold hand of fear grips her heart. They tear through the house in a frantic, disorganized sweep. Jeremy rips open the bathroom door, scouring closets and looking under bed frames, praying the older boys had simply started a middle-of-the-night game. Nothing but silence met them. Lisa had disappeared into the dark. Deborah spills out into the street, screaming her daughter's name into the void, desperate for this nightmare to break. Jeremy reaches for a cell to call for backup, but the house has been digitally stripped. All 3 phones are missing. A broken personal unit, a work phone, and a spare, all vanished into the night alongside the infant. At 4 a.m., he finds the landline. His voice cracks as he tells the dispatcher, "My daughter's been taken. She's only 10 months old. Someone snatched her right out of her crib." 15 minutes later, the first units arrive. They find shattered parents, a house ablaze with light, and an open window. The residence is officially a crime scene. By sunrise on October 4th, an Amber Alert is screaming across the airwaves. The community of Kansas City didn't just watch, they mobilized instantly. Hundreds of volunteers flooded the streets. But as the clock ticked, the trail only grew colder and more desperate. Before we dive deeper into the case files, I need you to take 2 critical actions. First, save this case to your playlist and share it with anyone who prioritizes the safety of children. Second, show some solidarity below. Leave a message for the families still waiting for their missing ones to come home. Every interaction helps keep Lisa's story from being buried in the archives. Let's keep the spotlight on her. Let's get back to the evidence. The Bureau arrives the following day. Teams scour the fields and wells, but every sunset brings 0 leads. Then, the investigation takes a dark turn. The crosshairs shift toward the very people who called for help. Around midnight that evening, a ghost signal appears. One of the stolen phones pings a 50-second call to a Megan Wright. The name meant nothing to the parents. They had no connection to this woman. Megan Wright was the former flame of a local handyman, John Tanko, better known on the streets as Jersey. Here is the detail that haunts me. Jersey already had 3 priors for home invasions. He'd been spotted lurking near childcare centers twice before. The department had him on their radar for years. They knew his signature move was the window entry. They knew his MO inside and out. They knew he targeted homes with small children. And what did the authorities do with that intelligence? Not a single thing. 0 results. That night, 3 separate observers reported a male figure transporting an infant through the darkness near the midnight hour. The child was clad solely in a diaper, despite the external temperature hovering near 45 degrees Fahrenheit. A single witness flagged Jersey from a photo lineup, yet 2 others flatly denied he was the individual they saw. Jersey's alibi held firm. The evidentiary threshold for an arrest wasn't met. Once more, the truth dissolved into the shadows. Come October 19th, canine units arrived at the Irwin residence. These were cadaver dogs, animals refined to alert on the odor of human remains. A dog signaled an alert near the primary sleeping quarters, yet forensic sweeps yielded no biological traces or physical proof. Nothing remained but a lingering seed of doubt that began to root in the public consciousness. Investigators eventually labeled the canine hit as inconclusive, but the psychological impact on the case was already irreversible. Focus shifted heavily toward Deborah for specific behavioral reasons. Her initial statement placed the final check on her daughter at 10 p.m. She later recanted, confessing that she hadn't actually verified the child's presence since 6:40 that evening. Her account of alcohol consumption fluctuated from 2 glasses to perhaps 10. The narrative was constantly shifting. There exists one specific behavioral anomaly that shatters any assumption of standard maternal protective instincts. Released interrogation footage captures moments where Deborah describes her missing child while intermittently breaking into misplaced laughter. It didn't appear to be a nervous tic or shock-induced. It was an eerie, psychologically vacant expression of levity. As her 10-month-old remained lost, she giggled under questioning. Then there is the matter of the alcohol. That fateful evening, Deborah and a neighbor consumed an entire boxed container of wine between them. Bystanders noted her high level of intoxication. She admitted her state left her with significant memory gaps. This blackout period fueled intense suspicion. No one could account for the events once the house plunged into darkness. Following hours of intense interrogation, she consented to undergo a polygraph examination to clear her name. Authorities later confirmed a failure. Her response was emotional, claiming she was being framed as a convenient scapegoat. The public perception fractured immediately. One camp viewed her as a grieving victim, the other a cold perpetrator. Months following the child's disappearance into the night, a public petition surfaced demanding accountability for the parents. The leveled allegations were severe and unforgiving. The filing claimed Lisa sat unattended for nearly 12 hours, while also noting Deborah's use of certain medications, specific antidepressant prescriptions. A betrayal came from the inner circle. Shirley Pfaff, once a confidant, went on the record against her. Upon witnessing her hidden persona, I realized I should never have trusted her with a single shred of confidence. She presents a compassionate exterior at times, yet a darker, unrecognizable personality lurks beneath. I find her entire narrative to be completely untrustworthy. Her tears are tactical. She possesses the chilling ability to manufacture emotion. She is a master of manipulation. The truly unsettling developments came later. The parents eventually moved back into the original crime scene. They maintained the nursery as a frozen monument. They even purchased age-appropriate clothing for an impossible return. Holiday presents were bought for a ghost. Deborah claimed this proved the child was still a part of their family. It was either a display of profound grief or a calculated performance. Does this behavior signal innocence or a deeper deception? Should they have faced formal charges for their negligence? Share your theories below. To date, no arrests have been made. No one has faced justice. Declarations remained fluid. Witness accounts grew hazy as the technical specifics of that night blurred. Theories range from a black market abduction to the darker suspicion of an inside job by the mother. Over a decade elapsed. Then, in 2013, a young girl named Maria appeared in a Greek camp. She was fair-haired and blue-eyed. A glimmer of hope for every parent of a missing child across the globe. Forensic testing quickly crushed those hopes. There was zero biological link to the Irwin case. In 2025, a 6-part investigative podcast was launched, taking a fresh look at the evidence. It involved 3 years of deep cover surveillance and fresh interviews, including clandestine footage of Jersey Tango. The investigation suggests significant new findings that may finally point toward a definitive resolution. Yet the core enigmas remain. Who placed that 11:57 p.m. call? And why did the family dog stay silent? How does an intruder extract a child from a residence without triggering a single alarm? We must question if the mother's intoxication was a genuine blackout or a convenient veil. Are we expected to believe an opportunistic predator simply drifted through an unbolted entryway in the middle of the night? What truly transpired in those shadows? Was this a tragic domestic accident followed by a cold, calculated concealment? Or was it a predatory abduction that culminated in silent screams and ash? Today, Lisa would have been 14 years old. She would likely be navigating high school hallways or experiencing the first tremors of adolescent romance. Or perhaps she is simply a ghost. The ultimate horror is that her pulse remains an unconfirmed mystery to this day. The void left by her sudden absence tore through the very psychological fabric of the Kansas City community. This investigation ignited sprawling search parties and a tidal wave of public sympathy that refused to dissipate for years. A case without a closing file serves as a jagged reminder of how unresolved trauma haunts both the hearth and the neighborhood. For the parents, living in this perpetual state of not knowing is a psychological slow burn of absolute devastation. In the wake of that night, every local parent developed an obsessive ritual of checking and rechecking their deadbolts. Every mother sat in the dark, monitoring the rhythmic rise and fall of her child's chest, terrified of the silence. Experts at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children continue to generate digital aging profiles, ghostly projections of her at 3, 7, and 11. $100,000 was placed on the table by an unnamed benefactor, a bounty for the one truth that brings her home. But consider the most disturbing element of this entire investigation. It isn't just the disappearance itself. It's the systematic breakdown of every safety net designed to protect the vulnerable. Law enforcement overlooked the red flags. Reports of a predator loitering near the playgrounds were filed away and ignored just days before the breach. The bureaucratic machinery of social services simply allowed a vital report concerning the child to vanish into a black hole. News outlets transformed a human tragedy into a primetime spectacle, bribing neighbors for any scrap of sensationalist gossip. Networks monetized a family's agony, prioritizing viewership metrics over the actual recovery of a missing 10-month-old. Consider this unsettling anomaly. Only 72 hours after the infant vanished into thin air, Deborah sat for a manicure and hairstyling, seeking cosmetic comfort while her daughter was still unaccounted for. Analyzing these files always leads me back to the same question. Which behavioral indicators did we fail to identify? I want your perspective in the comments. Was this an avoidable catastrophe or an inevitable failure of the environment? The chilling reality is that this pattern repeats. Somewhere right now, a repeat offender is slipping through the cracks because of administrative negligence. Elsewhere, a guardian is prioritizing a bottle of numbness over the fundamental security of their defenseless child. Somewhere, a caseworker is closing a folder that should have stayed open, sealing another innocent fate. No deadbolt can guard against a system that has grown indifferent to the very souls it was sworn to shield. If the perimeter could fail for Lisa, then no one is truly beyond the reach of such a nightmare. We have reached the end of this briefing, yet the file on Lisa Irwin remains hauntingly open and unsolved. Ensure your connection to this feed is secure, and your alerts are active for future case updates. Each investigation we dissect serves as a tactical lesson in identifying threats before they manifest in your own home. This narrative stands as a cold reminder. A child's safety isn't just about physical locks, but on the unblinking vigilance of our institutions. Study our other findings, spread the word, and be the advocate for the silenced. From an investigative standpoint, how do we reinforce the flaws in our social and legal armor? If you were embedded in this scenario, what would your move have been? Provide your analysis below. I appreciate your focus on this harrowing intelligence. We will reconvene for the next briefing. We serve as the voice for those who were silenced. Today, 3620 North Lister Avenue appears unremarkable to the casual observer. Fresh faces occupy the space, yet the local memory remains scarred by the events of that night. They recall the frantic beams of flashlights cutting through the mist and the phantom echoes of an infant's distress. They remember the exact moment this quiet suburb was drafted into a theater of absolute psychological horror. Certain narratives never truly conclude. They simply linger in the shadows, waiting for the truth to surface.